This is actually way less scary than what I would have expected for when lightning hits a gas line. This is in Foxfield, that tiny map dot near Parker and Arapahoe. South Metro firefighters say the flames shouldn't spread beyond that, but since water's not going to put them out, East Hinsdale Ave is closed until XL can shut off the gas. South Metro tweeted that they will stay until the gas is turned off, which, guys, that sounds like a really good strategy. Weather geeks got a wild show when the storms moved over NCAR in Boulder this afternoon. Next, viewer Jared said the meteorologists at the National Center for Atmospheric Research like to flock out to the Skyway so they can hear that sound of the storm and see it overhead. They also ended up with piles of hail in the parking lot. The city of Brighton, however, could use a reminder in today's storm that that's not how you Colorado. Brighton decided to test its tornado sirens during the storm. I mean, basically, like, the only time that you don't want to test a tornado siren is right then. The city said it was supposed to be a silent test, but the siren wasn't silent. It went off, and sure enough, people thought there was a tornado bearing down on Brighton. This is not the first time that Brighton has been on the struggle bus when it comes to emergency tests. In 2016, the city of Brighton tweeted about a huge explosion, a chemical leak, a train crashing into a building. They even used the hashtag Brighton Chaos, only it was just a drill. The city later told us they didn't know that anyone could see the tweets.
I am so glad the warning system in Brighton works, and I'm so glad that it wasn't needed today. The weather was fierce, but not severe, and now the sun is back out over downtown Denver. Yeah, we had strong thunderstorms roll off the foothills. The convection kind of kept to a minimum for most of the day because it was cooler than average for mid-June. And those storms meant business, 1 to 3 inches of rain, prompting a flash flood warning from the National Weather Service for Aurora, Centennial, and Arapahoe Park. And the lightning has been amazing as well. A couple hundred strikes in 20 minutes time. All the heavy weather is off to the east of us, but still monitoring the potential for a little more rain coming off the foothills in Denver yet tonight. The areas in yellow, that is a slight risk for severe storms still expected between now and midnight tomorrow, that focus further south and east away from the city. So tonight, strong storms firing away for the next couple hours, then moving into Nebraska and Kansas, where there'll be a problem for people trying to get to sleep out there tonight. For us, a little bit of gentle rain here, a little fog overnight, and then another round of storms tomorrow. It looks like a heavy rain event more than a severe weather event, and will stay cooler than average as we are winding down the last few days of spring. Cloudy with a chance of showers in Denver tonight, low 53. Tomorrow, fog and clouds early, low temperatures in the 50s, but highs tomorrow way below average in the low 70s. Good chance for rain tomorrow, warmer, drier midweek, and then storms return for the summer solstice, which is Friday, the start of summer. Don't forget the 9 News weather app, very handy with the interactive radar, Kyle, during severe weather events.
Thank you, Kathy. Right now, we're going to get an update from the Colorado State Patrol Live, talking about the death of an officer over the weekend. Trooper William Modane is the second trooper hit and killed this year while working on a crash along the interstate. Let's listen into the briefing. We're expecting to hear from the head of CSP, Colonel Matt Packard.
Good evening. I'm Colonel Matthew Packard, Chief of the Colorado State Patrol, P-A-C-K-A-R-D. First, again, good evening, and thank you all very much for being here today to talk about the incident that happened last Friday. I want to start by expressing my personal, sincere thanks for the incredible outpouring of support from the members of the community near and far. And on behalf of the men and women of the Colorado State Patrol, thank you as well. You have no idea how much that means. Being able to be here as people are dropping things off on this is his patrol car, as they're offering their support, means more than you know. In fact, I was in a meeting with his family today, and they asked me specifically to extend their deep and sincere appreciation. So it really lifts us up in a time when we really need it, and the same for the family. So again, thank you very much. As you know, my intent is to provide a brief update regarding the investigation. I want to emphasize the fact that the investigation is very much still in progress, and it is not complete by any sense. So please keep that in mind, and up front I'll be somewhat limited on other questions specific to the investigation to preserve its integrity. But as you know, on Friday, June 14th, members of the Colorado State Patrol responded to a report of a single vehicle rollover crash on eastbound I-70 in the area of milepost 324 near the town of Deer Trail. It's again in eastern Arapahoe County. That particular crash involved a vehicle in which multiple parties were ejected, and it met the qualifications for our organization to ask for an investigation by our vehicular crimes unit. Trooper Modane was a member of that unit and was called to the scene to investigate that crash. He arrived on scene of that crash at approximately 8 o'clock that night and began completing his investigation. At approximately 9:40, he was in the process of documenting the scene when he was struck by a vehicle that came through. Immediately after being struck, another trooper on scene responded to his aid and began life-saving measures. An emergency medical staff was called back to the scene after having been there from the first crash, attempted life-saving efforts, and ultimately he was flown to University Hospital, where staff were unable to revive him. And shortly after 11 o'clock on Friday night, Trooper Modane was declared deceased. At the time of the crash, Trooper Modane's patrol vehicle was parked on the right shoulder of I-70 with its lights activated, as was an additional patrol car from another trooper that was on scene. The collision involved a 1999 Ford F-250 that was driven by an adult male that's from our state. And at the time of the collision, the truck was driving in the left lane. At this time, the crash is being investigated by members of the Colorado State Patrol's Vehicular Crimes Unit from another part of that team, as well as members of our Investigative Services section, and they're doing it together. Again, I want to stress the fact that this is an in-progress investigation. There are still many things that need to occur. Example, additional interviews, analysis of evidence that's been collected, as well as an examination of the vehicle that was involved. So it's still early as to what are the next conclusions or steps. I just don't know yet as that investigation will continue. I just want to say something I've said before, that Trooper Modane was an incredible asset to this organization, who is dedicated and committed to serving the people of Colorado. Our state is tremendously safer because of his efforts that he did on a lot of different levels. And as we work through our grief, again, the support from the community has been tremendous, and we appreciate it greatly. As we plan a service, it's nice to know we're doing it for a guy that did everything he possibly could to serve, and he was on scene of a crash, doing what he loved, serving the people of Colorado, and he was darn good at it. He was one of our best investigators. The services have been finalized. The services will be held this Friday, June 21st at 11 a.m. At First Church of Denver, which is off of Hampden, and that service will be open to the public. And I encourage folks to pay their respects. The only other thing regarding the investigation that I would like to make sure that's captured is the driver of the truck has been cooperative, and at this time we do not believe there's any impairment suspected in the crash. So with that, I'll open it up for any questions.
Could you please go back over the part where you were describing? It was really hard to hear, Trooper. Sorry about that.
It looks like they're going to go back over some of what you were able to hear earlier. Just a few new details about the crash that killed Trooper William Modane Friday near Deer Trail on I-70. The fact that the driver involved, the driver who struck Modane, is from Colorado, was driving a truck. I don't believe that the colonel said anything more specific than that, but that driver stayed and was cooperative. They do not believe that that driver was impaired. Also mentioned that that driver was in the left lane. That, of course, important because so often we'll see emergency responders working on the right side of the road, and as we've talked about so much over the last few years, they are trying to get people to move over and give them room. Modane's the 5th trooper killed on our road since 2015, so you've got those move over laws, and as our Steve Steger found, those losses have changed how law enforcement actually do their work along the roads.
Tifo, Jurcevics, Donahue, Groves, and now Modane. In the span of 4 years, Colorado's statewide police force has lost 5 public servants, 5 protectors. In that time, Colorado has made changes to the way we enforce a law to help protect them, encouraging drivers to move over for emergency vehicles and others working on the side of the road. And we learned today that the State Patrol has made some changes. In fact, just about every agency that works on the side of the road has made changes. Think CDOT crews, tow trucks, ambulances, and fire trucks. A spokesman for CSP told us each of those agencies used to have their own separate safety protocols. Now, they all train under the same system. They train for the same dangerous situations. As for closing the road when something dangerous is going on, CSP says there's really no black and white policy on when you close a road. Their priority is to keep traffic moving during an investigation if the situation is safe and the road is clear of debris. And we saw proof of that in Eagle County when troopers shut down I-70 yesterday because of this accident. The wreck did shut down the roadway, but the agency says troopers were able to move the debris off the road with their own vehicles, which helped them open it up an hour earlier than expected.
So we got an interesting question about Colorado's move over law over the weekend. The law says that you should move over if possible or slow down to avoid or to a reasonably safe speed if you can't move over. Now, this person wanted to know what defines a reasonably safe speed. And today, State Patrol told us there's really no formula for that, no 10 below or anything like that. They say they recommend people slow to a speed that would make them feel comfortable if they were on the side of the road. Yeah. Just something to think about as you're passing one of these scenes, Kyle.
Put yourself in their shoes. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Steve. So we learned today that the Douglas County School Board might shorten the charter length of STEM School Highlands Ranch following the shooting there last month. There's a resolution before the Douglas School Board tomorrow, which would shorten the STEM school's current 3-year charter down to just one more remaining year. It specifically cites the school shooting, saying that the shooting, quote, raised questions about school safety and security that may impact the terms and conditions of the STEM charter school's contract. In response, the head of the STEM school sent out a letter to parents urging them to come out in support of the school at the Douglas School Board meeting tomorrow night. We'll be right back. Colorado's Taxpayer Bill of Rights, TABOR. What do you think of it? Like it? Dislike it? What if you had to vote? Because you might. Since 1992, Coloradans have been required to vote on tax increases before they happen because of TABOR. Well, a state Supreme Court ruling today sets up the Taxpayer Bill of Rights for one final vote. Here's politics guy Marshall Zellinger.
An effort to repeal TABOR from Colorado's Constitution has the okay from the Colorado Supreme Court. They ruled today that even though TABOR covers a lot of topics, getting rid of it altogether fits in with Colorado's single subject rule, meaning ballot issues can only deal with one topic and not be asking voters something they might say yes to in some parts and no to others. Among the topics TABOR covers: tax increases. You get a vote on every tax increase proposal before it would take effect. Annual spending limits. A too complicated for TV formula determines how much the state can keep and spend every year. It's based on population and inflation. Ballot language. When you're asked to raise taxes or allow debt, TABOR dictates that it's supposed to read a certain way in all capital letters. Oh, this is harder than I thought. Refunds. If the state takes in too much money based on that formula I mentioned, voters are entitled to refunds. So now that voters could be asked to repeal all of TABOR, will the group that wants to do it actually collect signatures to put it on the ballot in 2020?
You know, as I often say to my children, everything involves a trade-off. I think a 2020 election year is great because turnout is great. People are really focused because it's a presidential election year. I will say that the trade-off of that is media time is much more expensive. Trying to attract attention to this kind of an issue is much more difficult. Finding people who are willing to knock on doors and be a part of that community conversation becomes more complicated.
So will a full repeal of TABOR happen? She said 2020 is the goal on the ballot. If it happens, though, a big name likely won't be on board, at least based on Governor Jared Polis's interview with Kyle one day after he was elected.
You've talked proudly in the past about taking on the Taxpayer Bill of Rights at the ballot box. Are you committed to keeping the provision of TABOR that allows Coloradans to vote on tax increases?
Absolutely.
100%?
Absolutely.
And that tax increase will be the sticking point.
Yeah.
Will there be an effort to pick apart TABOR piece by piece to leave that in there but try to get rid of everything else? Will you take it all away like the Supreme Court said you can try to do? Or will you try to take it all away and be like, hey, we'll give you another ballot issue that says you can continue to vote on tax increases, but we'll take it away real briefly, trusting that you may want it back. It's a number of things.
That sounded to me like a guy who did not think that they were going to have this opportunity to just wipe the whole thing off the books.
And the group that's trying to do this, I mean, they threw 19 different proposals at the state title board. They got this one rejected, and part of the process is appeal it, and wham, they got the jackpot they probably weren't necessarily expecting.
Throw the you-know-what at the wall and see what sticks. All right, interesting. Marshall, thank you. So if this repeal TABOR effort ends up on the ballot in 2020, there is one next viewer who told Marshall that he can't help but take it personally.
My name is Tabor Smith. Every time someone sees the TABOR Taxpayer Bill of Rights in the newspaper, they send me a photo of it or the news clipping itself.
If voters were like, yeah, we don't want TABOR in Colorado anymore, what are you going to do?
Well, I mean, I guess I listen to the voters move. I'm a native, so I don't even know where I'd go. But I mean, you know, we're just trying to take this news, you know, as it comes, trying to take it. My family's struggling a little with it all.
It's tough to watch. So, hey, we knew the governor was a big baseball fan. I mean, 100% baseball fan, just like him keeping that part of TABOR, 100%. What we didn't know is that the governor has skills. I'll show you. It's a sign in another language. Have you seen these around town? We figured out what they're saying and where they're from. It really should have been no surprise that Governor Polis threw out a fantastic first pitch at the Rockies game on Friday night. I mean, he had the leg kick down and everything. Was there late movement on that pitch? I think there was late movement on that pitch. So Polis has been a big baseball fan all his life, loves to talk about baseball. And in fact, our former political reporter here at 9 News, Adam Schrager, remember Adam? He was one of the greats. He wrote about Polis going to the Rockies fantasy baseball camp back in 2003. Polis was there at the Rockies camp at the same time as then Governor Bill Owens. And in their book, The Blueprint, Adam Schrager and his co-author Rob Whitwer wrote about Polis displaying some actual talent at baseball camp. Then Rockies coach Clint Hurdle said Polis had some skills. Roads, you know, were just the first frontier in our segment chronicling Colorado's chronic line crossers. I dare say that if you go to park and find yourself on the sidewalk, like the driver Ashley spotted at the Whole Foods on Hamden, then you've crossed a line. They just want to make sure they didn't impinge on anybody to the other side. See a line crossed? Email next at 9news.com or get our attention with the hashtag HeyNext. It is a sign that we cannot read until we figured out the code, and we cracked it. Next. It's a sign, and it is one that is designed to stump us to get our attention. I have seen these things all over town. Billboards, bus stops. Next viewer named Nikki did too. She snapped this photo of the billboard at Colfax in Franklin. So Nikki, it turns out this is an ad for the Children's Museum's new Adventure Forest climbing gym. Our editor, Jeff, figured it out. The sign reads, "Journey to the Last Sacred Forest." We have a link if you want to decipher the language on your own. It's on the next Facebook page. Matthew tweets in with a note of appreciation for our next producer, Erica Tinsley, who's answered a number of questions for him online. Says, "You've always promptly answered my questions, and that does not go unnoticed." Also noticed, Julie Strahan says, "You guys are really proud of that TABOR graphic with the blocks tonight. How many times did you show it?" He's very proud, isn't he? Oh, look at this.
Just proud.
He's very proud. This is what he does all day. He plays with blocks and he gets paid for it. We'll see you next time.